Thank you, Kshitij, and the esteemed panelists. We are a bit behind schedule, so I will take the opportunity to invite the panelists of the next panel discussion on understanding the impact of water demand management on excuse me, on consumption and water allocation. And I will moderate the session, and I'd like to invite my panelists, Dr. Ismahan Al-Wafi, who is the Director General of the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture in Dubai. Dr. Al-Wafi, please, can you take your seat? Mr. Alan Thompson, the Managing Director of Abu Dhabi Sewage Services Company, and Mr. Vladimir Tosanovic, the President of the International Association of Water Supply Companies in the Danube River catchment area. Okay, now water demand management is, of course, very significant issue and very important issue. And I'm happy to have the diversity of perspectives over here on the stage. If we can start with Dr. Al-Wafi, you are managing a biosaline agriculture organization. So can you tell us what's your experience from that perspective, please, in water demand management and its impact on allocation?
Absolutely, yeah. So first I would like to just state that we talk a lot about water demand management, but when we look at the numbers, it's striking. If we look at the last century, for example, the population of the world tripled, but the water demand multiplied by 6. So we increase our demand of water, and that includes everything, agriculture, industry, urban. And unfortunately, agriculture is one of the bigger users of water. So if we look at, for example, Asia, 90% of water is used for agriculture. If we look at the Arab world, it's 88%. So there's a huge water demand from the agricultural side, and it's because of the growth of the population. It's because of the increase of demand for food. And that's why I think looking at the demand, it's very important when we look at the balance that we look at how could we manage it better through decreasing the water use, and how could we increase the supply itself. And ICBA, the International Center of Biosaline Agriculture, it's looking at new technologies. It's a lot of technologies that are related to irrigation, that are related to the cropping system itself. It's looking at new crops as well that use less water. So the biggest, the component that is the most important for us is how could we have a good cropping system that will require less water in the countries where we work, and mostly in marginal environments. And the other component that we are looking for is how could we use low quality water? How could we use saline water, for example, which is existing? If we look at the seawater, for example, is there a way to increase some of the crops with the seawater, or with up to 70%, 50% of the salinity of the water? Could we use wastewater, for example, as well? So I think the center, it's looking both at increasing the productivity in marginal environment, with using less water, and looking at the quality, so the quantity and the quality of waters.
I will get back to you actually about the alternative water resources and its use. But I'd like to move to Vladimir, because Vladimir, you have the other perspective, the perspective of the water supply companies for domestic use. So, and in a water abundant region actually, especially compared to the Gulf. So can you tell us about that perspective?
Well, yes, I'm coming from the region where we have abundant quantities of water. I'm representing the Danube River Basin. We have an association of water supply companies in the Danube River catchment area, and that means that some 15 countries or water supply companies from 15 countries are our members. And we are dealing with all these aspects of water supply, and we are the voice of the water suppliers in the region. So concerning this topic we are discussing about the demand, we have enough water as a source, but at the same time, limited quantities for the use which is not in accordance with supplying people for domestic use. Normally, we supply households and industry. Irrigation is a little bit on the other side. Concerning this current situation in the region, we had, for instance, last year very severe floods which hit us so as a consequence of the climate change, and at the same time in some areas during summertime we have no precipitation and droughts which could take 2 or 3 months. So in that cases we have a problem of the population to use water from the tap to irrigate, especially in suburban areas, and that creates another problem, how to keep the systems under control and provide the right service to the population. So that's basically where I'm coming from, and at the same time, we are facing the same challenges as every water supply company. All the capital cities from the region are our members, and we are behaving like every big water supplier worldwide.
Thank you. Alan, I passed you on purpose because I wanted to talk about the water supply first before we move to the sewage part, or the sanitation part of the cycle. So can you tell me, from the perspective of your organization also, you are the managing director of the Abu Dhabi Sewerage Service Company. From that perspective, how are you dealing with the water demand management issue?
Thank you, and you can pass by me anytime, that's okay. What we're doing in Abu Dhabi Sewage Services Company is pushing as hard as we can to reuse all our treated water. The late Sheikh Zayed, the father of the UAE, a very revered figure in this area, instigated at the very start of his rule the recycling and the precious value of water. And because of that legacy, we inherited a system which is built with recycled water as part of the basic thinking of any design that we instigate. So currently we recycle 60% of our volume that we receive in the system, and we have plans to recycle, or reuse rather, 100%. That has been an objective of ADSSC from the very earliest of days of our existence, and which is nine years ago. It has not been an easy objective because the legislation and the players involved in the reuse are different from those that are supplying. So we don't have control over the end user. We only have responsibility for transmission of the water. But we've had some notable successes. In particular, Al-Ain, which is the second city of the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, we now reuse 100% of the water that's produced in Al-Ain. So it shows that it is possible. We know that the demand is out there. It's just, the earlier panel was talking of connectivity, and one of the issues that we're looking at is the connectivity. The main end user is for irrigation, it's the municipality. The municipality's distribution system has largely stayed static, while the growth in Abu Dhabi has doubled the volume over the last 9 years. So we now have plans. We've been working extremely hard with other partner organisations, including the municipality, the Environment Agency, and Abu Dhabi government. And we are now at the stage where everybody understands the issue and the problem. And I'm very optimistic that perhaps in 3 years' time we will have 100% of our water reused.
Oh.
Now, to put that in perspective, our percentage of water in the total usage of water in the Emirate is approximately between 6 and 8%. So we are a small player in the overall use of water. The other much bigger suppliers are desal and groundwater. And the sustainability of the model, I think, is being debated at the moment.
I'd like to come back to that.
I'll stop there.
Especially about the investment needs for the reuse. That's a very big question over here. But I'd like to move back to Ismahan now. About the alternative source of water that you are working on. What do you think environmentally, about that source? Should it be promoted to be used for agriculture or only to be resorted to when there is no other alternative? From the demand management perspective, I mean.
So I think in one of days we have no choice. We have to use it because obviously we are requiring much more than the water that we have. And in the same time, we are using so much water, we are treating that water in the countries that can afford treatment, and we are throwing it in the sea or throwing it in the environment. So I think if you look at the whole, if we want to go internationally, the UN number shows that we have 2 million tons per day that are waste water, and they're not all treated. So the good examples of Abu Dhabi or Dubai or other countries where there is a treatment is very good. But when you don't treat it, for example, from the urban setting, and you have about 1 liter can contaminate about 8 liters, so you see the numbers get much bigger. So I think from the perspective that we need it, it's a must in my perspective, because we need more water. The second one, from the environmental side, it has to be treated. So and since you treat it and you spend so much money on it, you need to reuse it. So I agree with Alan, the problem is really the investment. I think the users, especially the agriculture users, would love to have access to that water. There is a component on the social side that I can address, but regardless of the other issues, if they have access to that water, I'm sure they're going to use it. For example, we were in Saudi. Saudi have the Kingdom of Saudi. They are reusing wastewater in the Riyadh region, for example, but not in the Jeddah region. And the problem is mostly access. It's mostly putting the infrastructure to get that water to the users. So in a nutshell, it's a must use, and the government should invest in making that connectivity to the farmers specifically, knowing that the farming system use the majority of the water.
I will come back to that.
Maybe
as
what
well.
I could add, Faraj, is that based on the research worldwide, most of the time when you have a second treatment, you are safe. In most cases, we are using it for trees or using it for forages. When you go to veggies and legumes or greens, you have to go to the third treatment. So that's the study that has shown in many places in the world, including in our center in Iqba in Dubai, where we try it in the environment of the GCC. But countries like China, Chile, Mexico has been using treated wastewater for a very long time for agricultural purposes.
Vladimir, I'd like to come back to talk. I mean, you are the president of an association of water utilities. And I work on a program also that provides capacity building for these utilities. And one of the themes that is always demanded is water demand management. Can you tell me about the experience of your association in that?
Yes, we are the mixture of companies from developed world. That's our association starts from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and coming down to the developing countries, which still need some kind of assistance, support, and that's our main activity. We share our experience for more than 20 years, and that was very, very successful. And nowadays we are running a very important program together with the World Bank on capacity building and institutional strengthening in water sector, and covering 11 countries from our region, and that's exactly dedicated to what you ask. That's part of integrated water resource management, and in particular, there are many segments which are dealing with demand management. That's a program which will last in next 4 years. So we spent already 2 years working on it, and this will definitely bring a lot of benefits for each country and each water utility. So starting with the technical issues, demand management means partly how you deal with your technical problems. For instance, what are the benchmarks you have to achieve? How you are dealing with leakage water or non-revenue water? Then what's your hydraulic schemes? How you are dealing with pressure management, and so on. That's on the utility. How to reduce the waste in water which goes to the ground, and how to maintain your networks in a proper way. That's maybe one of the first things. Then how to improve the efficiency of the company, how to be more energetic efficient, how to reduce the electric power consumption. Water companies are on the top of using electric power. For instance, I'm coming from city of Belgrade. We are supplying 1.7 million people, and we are top one in spending electricity in the city of Belgrade. We are a very good customer for our electricity provider. So that's on that part. At the other hand, we are introducing all standards which are now in place in Europe, starting from European directives on water, and dealing with ISO standards, with HSSP standards, then coming to an overall tool which is very much useful for the water companies. That's asset management. That's an overall scheme or technology or whatever. There are many definitions what it is, but that's routine and technique. How to say keep your assets on a best way. How to keep your company, your system to be healthy, and how to prepare all your short and medium and long-term investment plans.
Alan, you dwelled on two very important issues for this country and the region. Number one, the allocation between agricultural and domestic use. You mentioned very important percentages. And so can you tell us more about the perspective or the potential for reallocation of water in this region? Also, I wanted to ask about the investment needs for your 100% reuse. Can you talk about these two issues a bit fast, please? Yes.
Okay. Very quickly, the opportunity to use the water and apply recycled water to better benefit, if you like. I think IGBA did a report, I think, in 2009, which advocated the water is best used in agriculture, and that's where we are pursuing. So the water is tertiary treated to very high standard, and it will be utilized on forestry and on farms. The investment, we are awaiting the award of one particular pipeline, which will take 140,000 meters cubed of our available water up towards Dubai to feed into the farms and forestry area adjacent to that route. And a similar investment on the Allocation direction, which is slightly behind in the approval stages, but we are hopeful that that will also be awarded this year. Both of these together will just about take up the available water in our system and move us well towards 100%. But the region has a massive growth in volumes. We experience between 6 and 8% per year volume growth. So we have to keep ahead of that volume growth, and we are always looking and planning for other schemes and other alternatives. It's not my domain, but I think the water can be used more economically in how it's applied at the end by the end user. And I think we can spread our water into a much wider region without necessarily increasing the volumes.
Thank you. There's a lot of issues and more issues to talk about in water demand management, and there is questions also coming from the audience, but I have to be aware of the time since I'm keeping it. Let's finish by a final word. Let's start from Vladimir. Very fast, 30-second final comment, Vladimir.
Well, I will try just to give my short view on how we understand demand management. So, and how we deal with it. So we have 3 points.
Please.
One is technical, so managing pressures, metering is very important, what we didn't mention. Then economic tools, that means we call it pocket economy, introducing block tariffs for who use more than it is available or it is he has to pay. So that's the sense. And of course, one social aspect, that's communication and education and these kind of things, which has to be handled by the water utility.
Thank you. Alan?
Very quickly, I think we will do everything we can to achieve our 100% objective, and I think that is realistic given the position we're in. I think to change tack very quickly, one of the initiatives in the UAE this year is to introduce a new tariffing system or increase in tariffs to reduce subsidy for water and power. And there's work being done on tariffs for wastewater also. The change which was introduced on the 1st of January, it will be very interesting to see the elasticity of demand and the impact of introducing these tariffs on current water usage.
Thank you. Isma?
I think to address the issue, you have a technical component and a policy component. And technological, I agree with my colleagues, it's a lot of using the techniques to decrease a little bit the waste, because we have about 50% that is weighted through the value chain. But the policy side, it's going back to the prices and going back to regulation and monitoring to make sure that the price for water used for agriculture, it's at least close to the urban price that we are paying, for example. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your perspectives. And I'm sorry for the audience that I couldn't take their questions also because of the time constraint. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please help me in